talked about many different perspectives, and we read many different opinions and many different things. But today, the topic I chose kind of relates to what we've read about, most specifically in regards to Chino. So my topic is racism in Japan and how it relates to the world of Japanese short fiction. And many Japanese writers, as well as American writers, and Zainichi Kankokuji, a resident Korean living in the country, have written many different things about this. And today, I'll talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to talk about possible perspectives. First, we have racism towards Japanese, and well, what we read in class was Chino, where we read about the perspective of a Japanese person going into Mexico, where he encounters racism towards Japanese people. They all consider him to be Chinese, or they keep calling him Chino, and it's not very good. But you get to learn about this perspective of a Japanese experiencing racism towards himself. So that's one possibility, and I feel like we got a pretty good handle on it. And then the next, but I felt like that was only one perspective. I feel like in order for a person to truly understand the full spectrum of ideas and the full spectrum of things, we have to know many different perspectives. So knowing only the perspective of racism towards a Japanese person, I feel doesn't help us to understand everything about how racism relates towards Japanese short fiction. So in that sense, I decided to then go along with Adrian's idea of reading The Catch by Kenzaburo Oe. And this has racism from Japanese towards an American black pilot who gets captured in Japan at about the end of World War II. And this also relates to lots of ways into what we've been talking about, because lots of the things that we talk about in class have to do with war-torn Japan and the country still surviving, and you know, people like really struggling to survive, and people sort of struggling to maintain ways of life and kind of get their minds working again to, I guess, realize people are people and such. And the story was extremely racist towards the pilot who was captured, but my hope is that the author's goal wasn't to show and spread racism towards blacks and Americans and all of that. I'm hoping that it is more geared towards showing Japanese people, like, look at what you're doing, you're treating this guy like a creature. And if Kenzaburo Oe's goal was that, I feel like it was very successful, as the pilot is basically captured, treated like a creature, and then until he just kind of snaps, tries to kill a little boy, and then they kill him in the end. I probably spoiled the whole book. Never wanted to read it, but well, anyway, that was that book. But yeah, it was very good, and it's not a big read either. It's like 50, 60 pages, something like that. It's well written. It kind of, well, won the Akutagawa Award, and it doesn't really follow the I-novel style. It follows kind of in that Akutagawa heavy imagery, dark setting sort of feel. So if you kind of like the Akutagawa sort of thing, then I recommend it also. And also, as we learned by Sakai-san's father last week, Oe novels really easy to relate to sort of the sort of things that we read that he read to us last week. So the next thing I want to discuss is the Zainichi Korean phenomenon and the authors who write about it. So we have a lot here listed, but to me the most interesting one is the last one, Gi Young Ji. I really wanted to read this story called Yugi, which was about that Japanese Korean who lives in Japan. I mean, a Korean who lives in Japan, and she's lived there her whole life, can't speak Korean, and this is the author's story, by the way. And then, so she has a distressing life that she's never accepted. So then she writes and makes the story called Yugi, which has a character that's similar. It's very high novel tradition-like, but I mean, that it's only written in Japanese, and it seemed very interesting. And they have lots of different Zainichi Kankokujins that are writing today in Japan. This is one example. Let's see, the second to last one, Kim Moon-jip. I can't say Korean names at all, but that appeared to be another very fascinating writer to me as well. And then they also have, oh God, I'm not even trying to say the guy's name, but then there's another poet that also, man, I was going to say. And he wrote, he made like a movies that are very interesting too, which show what Koreans go through there. But I heard this story has to do more with linguistical problems that the main character has in Yuki, between her mother tongue of Japanese and trying to understand the mother tongue of Korean. So this is also another interesting perspective too, because it kind of has to do with the Japanese perspective, because it's different than the perspective of racism towards Japanese and racism against Japanese, and that you have characters that are basically Japanese. I mean, their names are Japanese, their parents could be Japanese, they could probably not even be able to speak Korean, yet they're not considered to be Japanese, they're just looked at as Korean. And listening to this perspective on racism is also very interesting, as many of these Zainichi Kankokujins are also not accepted by Koreans as well as not accepted by Japanese. So it's really interesting to learn about that perspective too. All right. I'm going to go to my next one. Next, we have other possibilities. And here we have Senpo Sugihara, who during World War, and this is kind of, I wanted to give the perspective of how Japanese deal with seeing racism being done to other people, like when Japanese are on the sidelines seeing what happens, what authors do in terms of writing about it. And so I did a little research on the man named Sugihara in response to the Holocaust, which in my opinion is the biggest ultimate form of racism and most horrible thing ever that could ever happen. So I wanted to see, learn about a Japanese person who's done some good just in saving Jewish lives. And while the book Visas for Life isn't exactly a short fiction novel, it is a memoir / biography of the person. So it does relate to fiction. I mean, not fiction, but literature. So it ties in to the talking about racism. But this man, Sugihara, worked for Japan as kind of like an ambassador, sort of like getting work visas for people to go to Japan. And he was stationed in Latvia, Lithuania area during World War II. And he saw what was happening to the Jewish people, and he learned about it from Jewish people. And he was like, something's got to be done. So he goes to the Japanese, government and says, help me get some working visas for these people. And then he gets denied. And then he goes and asks again, we need working visas, gets denied again. And then he gets denied a third time. And then they're starting to call back all the people who were asked to go out into other countries. And he's like one of the last few to get called out. So in the time of 2 weeks, he writes some thousands of working visas. And he just saves thousands of lives. And it's rumored that as he's on the train going away, he's actually throwing working visas out the window. And he also forced his wife to write working visas too, and just lie and risk her life. And then he goes to Japan, and his reward for saving all these people's lives is that they fire him from his job. And then he has to do all sorts of weird odd and ends jobs. And then eventually he gets some kind of job in Moscow in the USSR, working between them and I guess Japan. And then 2 years before he dies, he gets called by Israel that he's been inducted into the hallway or the Hall of Heroes, which is Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Israel, has like a whole row, or not a whole row, but like a whole like mentioning of all the people from all different countries in the world who saved lives. And this time, all between this time, we never knew who was saved, what happened to who, and who died and whatnot. He had no idea. He thought maybe they all died. For 2 years, I mean, he's really sick. He's an old man, and he finds out about this, and he's too sick to go because he's an old man. But his wife and son went, and he got to learn. You know, he saved millions of lives. He saved thousands of lives, maybe millions if you count generations to generations and all of that. And he got to enjoy it for 1 more year, and then he passed away. But, and according to my mom, who visited Moscow, this is a statue they have in L.A., but according to my mom, they also have a statue in Lithuania. Like, she was passing on the bus, like on a train, and there was a statue of a Japanese man, and like, my mom's neighbor was like, who's that? Why is a Japanese man here in Lithuania? And my mom, like, knew the story, so it was really interesting. All right, get out. Only 10 minutes?
You're doing good, yeah.
I am doing good? All right. I guess, though, my last thing was just to try to open it up for, like, a forum. Does anybody have, like, any ideas or opinions or things on racism and things that we've read in, like, the class? Questions about the catch or...
Well, I just was wondering, have you read other things by O.A.?
By O.A.? Oh, man. No, but I have this book that I got that has The Catch and other stories.
Okay.
But, it's, the other stories are similar. It's like it falls the same genre, but...
And it was that story in particular that you won the Octagon Award for?
Yes, I believe that's the only one that he won the Octagon.
You can only get it once, and it's a prize only for new writers. Have I not mentioned that in class before? You don't ever get it. So somebody like Pushkino, who's won multiple awards, if he didn't get the Octagon Prize, he can't get it now.
I also wanted to mention that another interesting thing about O.A. is that he had a son who had like mental problems or something.
His son was born with some congenital, he had a lot of, he has a lot of very difficult health problems, including part of his brain wasn't fully developed when he was born, and they had to do multiple surgeries. Not all of it were successful, and you can read a lot about that. But he's also, he has, you know, some difficulty with speech and some things like that.
Yeah, he wrote a book about it.
Yeah. His son's a composer, a music composer. He makes music.
Yeah. And this picture is from
he's got some CDs out, yeah.
The picture is from what's it called? The
Personal Matter?
Personal Matter. Yeah, Personal Matter. That's it. Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Have you read that one?
So, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, after reading The Catch
Yeah.
and doing the research you did for this project, did your views change at all on racism and or?
And my views?
Yeah.
Or what do you mean?
I mean, that, how have your views changed, or how have your opinion changed, or has it changed at all, you know, as research?
Man, it was really interesting reading The Catch, and seeing how he's like, it seemed like the author was very distant towards the main character. It seemed like, I mean, he described the character well, and he described struggles, but it seemed like he didn't seem to understand at all, like, the other guy's perspective, or he wasn't capable of putting on the other guy's shoes, even though he really tried to. And I think that seems to be a lot of the struggles that a lot of people have, and that I've heard of in my own experience, like coming from nations where there are many different types of races, and going into nations where there are like few races, like Japan, like Mexico too, like as he described in Chino. And also, when I lived in Israel for a little bit, like people who were not Jewish also seem to have different problems with getting acclimated there. So that kind of didn't surprise me, the distance of it, but I was still really impressed if his goal was, as I think it was, to show, look at how we're treating this guy like a creature. So that I really liked. So, yeah, I guess, I don't know, a little bit, but I'm not sure how. Sorry.
Sorry, just about the catch then. Who is the narrator in the story?
The narrator is this little boy
Okay.
who describes about his past, and he describes about how they're kind of like, I guess, ostracized from the rest of society, his family, and they take this pilot into their house and put him in like the basement, and
Did
like
everybody get how the pilot shows up? You might want to back up and tell them what happens, like, how the pilot gets there.
So I guess he was just flying overhead, and the main author described it as like the bombs had just landed, and he's like scared that this other plane is going to fly over, and it's going to be the third bomb or something, and then it wasn't. And then the guy's just injured, and they take him back to the house, and then they just like throw him in there. And at first they're like debating, do we keep the guy? Don't we? And then eventually...
So is he just caught by like ordinary citizens then, not by the military, or?
These are probably ordinary citizens,
Okay,
but
alright.
like, they put him inside of there, in the bottom, in the basement, I guess, of the house, I think. That's how they were describing it to me, but, and then, they're kind of waiting, like, to see what's gonna happen. They're talking about having officials come, but in the meantime, the guy goes berserk and tries to kill the little boy.
Little boy in the area?
The little boy in there,
Yeah.
There's this, like graphic description of the hands and the neck, and then
So, another question, like, how did he get from the plane to the ground? Was he shot down, or was he...
I think he was, I don't remember.
Yeah,
He was shot down.
We don't know for sure
Yeah.
that the plane, the plane is shot or something happens,
Yeah.
and but there's also this question that arises, was he thrown out of a plane? So there are a lot of kind of interesting questions that are kind of, that a good reader can think about, like at the beginning, like, you're a good reader, I'm not, but like, there are a lot of, questions that the beginning raises as to like, why he's there, but, because the little boy, it's not part of his experience. That part of the story isn't part of his experience. The story is about what is it like for these kids who all of a sudden have a black soldier that they can be in control of, and what they then do to him, and how he responds to that. And it's a really harrowing story, which is why I made you read it.
Another thing I want to say, which was really interesting to me, was how all the villagers seem to be getting used to him.
Yeah,
They seem to be getting used to him being a creature.
domesticated.